Hello, welcome everyone. My name is Janet. I am working through the King James's Bible. Today I'm in the book of Joshua and I'm in the final two chapters today. So we are covering chapters 23 and chapters 24. You would think there's not going to be a lot to cover, but there is quite a bit to cover in these final chapters. So let's get started. So here we are. Joshua is getting old and he's getting closer to that place of death. So he won't be with us for much longer. So in doing so, God asks him to bring all of the people together. So all of the Israelites congregate along with the elders and the judges and the officials. They all come together to hear what Joshua has to say as God works through him. So he expresses what God has done for them. So he's reminding them of the journey that they have been on and all of the wonderful things and the support they've had throughout this journey with God on their side. He shares how they've overcome all of these battles in the land of Canaan, this promised land, how they've overcome the nations and have inherited their land by lots, just as God promised. He says, stay obedient to the Lord. Be courageous in doing so. It takes a strong faith to do it because it doesn't always work as we expect, does it? We have to put our faith in God so then things work out for us. We don't have the timing, we stick with God's timing, and that is kind of what he's saying here. And do what is written in the book of law that Moses had written down through God. He says, never turn away, never turn left or right, meaning sort of don't stir away to something else, like something else has got your attention in that direction or the other direction. Stay focused ahead on God. He also says, do not make peace with your enemies, because some of them are still residing amongst them, remember? So he doesn't want them going towards their false gods, worshipping them, or marrying any of them, and becoming cursed as God would see them. He would curse them if they went down that path. So stay on the track of God. He says, stay true to your God as you've done to this day. Because they've followed him for the most part of this book. There was only that one turn, which was one person in the Israelites camp that went and stole from Jericho when they were told not to, and that surely turned them all. And they've stayed really true to God ever since that day. However, Joshua says, if you do turn against the Lord, your blessings will turn into curses and you will feel God's wrath. If you start going towards those nations that are worshipping other gods and you start marrying them and you start going down their path, then they will become snares and traps and you will perish. So it's like they might be there luring you towards what they do, but if you go there, if you go towards that temptation, things are going to turn around and they will then rage against you. It's like he will allow them, God, to then overtake you, and all that you have won, all that you have fought for will be gone. So Joshua constantly reminds them in this chapter to stay faithful to God and to know in their hearts, he wants them to know in their hearts that he has always had their back. He has always been there for them. Never doubt, always know, if I stay true to God, he has my back. So as faithfully you will be blessed, and as faithfully you do not follow him, you will be cursed. So either way, there's no grey area with God. You're either for him or you're against him. You'll either feel his wrath or you'll feel his blessings. So you decide, you get to decide which you choose. And we end this chapter with them being told to remember the covenant between them and God, to never go against it, for then you will feel God's anger, he will burn, and you will perish. So on that flaming ending, we will move into chapter 24. And this chapter is about renewing the covenant between them and God. And this all takes place at Shechem. Now, I didn't realise until I'd read The Enduring Word, which is online. It's a great resource if you want to sort of find more details about each chapter. Shechem as we have gone over, but you don't realize when you're reading these things, you don't note the place so much in your mind. But Shechem basically is where Abraham first camped in the promised land. That's where he first was. Jacob also camped there, and that is where he built an altar to the Lord. And Jacob's sons, remember, Levi and Simeon, those two sons, that is when they lured all of the men in that area, massacred them all. It was pretty brutal what they did. So when all of Jacob's family were in that area, Bethel, they then had to get rid of all of their idols. You know, it was a cleansing God wanted of what they had gone. They'd gone down the wrong path, and Jacob was getting them to be renewed. So they burnt all the idols, and actually what happened with all of those idols, they were buried under a tree in Shechem. So as you can see, Shechem is a very special place. It's a place for beginnings and also endings. That's how I see it. So they gather all here, this huge mass of people before Joshua. This is the elders again, and the judges and the officials, and all of the Israelites are waiting to hear what Joshua is going to say as God uses him as a vessel of expression. So he begins by saying the history of their forefathers. And he says, Terah, who was Abraham's father, the father of Nahor, lived on the other side of the Jordan River and worshipped other gods. But Abraham was led by God over into the promised land, where Abraham and God made a covenant. He said he follows him faithfully, he will increase his descendants, and they would prosper and be blessed. And Abraham agreed with this covenant. Then he was given the son of Isaac, and Isaac then had Jacob, Jacob and Esau got the mountains of Seir, and Jacob got Egypt. Remember, he became the leader of Egypt, and they flourished there for a while. But then you remember, as Jacob suddenly died and it was forgotten about, the king there in Egypt was concerned that the Israelites were going to take over him. So then he turned them into slaves. So slowly they ended up where they were flourishing. They became slaves in that land. And God brings forth Moses and Aaron. Aaron was the speaker, remember, because Moses was fearful of he didn't want to talk, he didn't feel he had the confidence to do it. And together, with God on their side, the plagues came onto the Egyptian king, Pharaoh, and it took a lot of attempts. It wasn't quick, but over time, slowly but surely, they were able to flee from Egypt. He parted the Red Sea, and then when they were through safely and the Egyptians had followed them behind, he closed that sea on them and destroyed all of their enemies, the Egyptians. So then they rejoiced, they were on the other side and were in the wilderness for a while because they were learning the way of God. It took them time, they kept falling off the tracks, and so they had to stay there a long time until they were ready to move forth. And in the wilderness they had a battle with the Amorites, and God came up and saved them, and they won that battle. Then the king of Moab, he didn't like they were coming onto his territory, and so he got Balaam, remember? He wanted him to put a curse onto those people. But God worked through him, and he ended up blessing them. So God has always been on their side. And then finally, as they enter the land of Canaan, which is when Moses himself had fallen from the Lord, he had to say his goodbyes on this side. Joshua takes the reign. He moves forwards with them. They go from Jordan with that water again ceasing so they can cross into Jericho. They win and they've conquered all of their enemies. They were all driven out, and look where you are now. This is kind of what Joshua is saying. Look where you are now. All of that And maybe not everybody who stood there has been through all of that, because there was many, many years and a lot of people have died. But your ancestors have gone through such a journey. So choose God, Joshua is saying, because look at what he's done for you. Be sincere and true to the Lord. Remove all of the other gods. Don't worship any of those other gods that the other nations that were residing here used to. They are no more, because the majority here are now the Israelites. And the Lord is your God. But they have free will. There's no forcing them to choose. It's just the consequences of their choice. And Joshua is saying, I choose the Lord. I'm going to serve the Lord like my household has. I'm a strong servant of the Lord, and that is where I will remain. He says, we will serve the Lord. Serve the Lord. And the Israelites all together say, yes, we will serve the Lord. So they are unanimous in their decision on how they will move forward. And after they've said that, Joshua says, don't say this half-heartedly. You know, when you're going to say it fully. Don't be sort of like, we'll serve him, but maybe I'll have a doubt and go this way. No, be totally strong to God. Because if you don't go that way, he will consume you, you will be cursed, and things are just going to go on a downward spiral. So Joshua makes a covenant with all of the people, the Israelites there, and God. And he said, you yourselves will bear witness to this covenant. And he makes a covenant, a statute, and an ordinance in Shechem. And he finally writes this all down in the book of law that Moses had written, so he puts his part in it. He then gets a large stone and shows the people that this will be a witness to the words today, and he places that stone under an oak tree so that they can all see it and be reminded of the covenant they have made this day. And then the people depart and they go to the land that is now their inheritance, which has been the promised land, this journey that they have been on. They are now here. They have arrived. And sadly, this is when Joshua, the son of Nun, dies. And he is 110 years old. He is buried in Timnath Serah in the mountains of Ephraim. And it just notes that all of the Israelites served God under Joshua's leadership. And they continued to serve God throughout all of the elders that outlived Joshua. So that carried on for that length of time. And they also buried Joseph's bones. Now remember, they took those from Egypt, took them with them. It was their plan always to bury those bones in Shechem, which is where they bury them. And this part of the land was bought by Jacob all those years ago. He bought that plot of land for his family, his descendants, for 100 pieces of silver. And the final piece in today's chapter is Elijah. He also dies. He is the high priest, and he passes over his role to his son, Phinehas, who then becomes the high priest. And that is the end of the book of Joshua. I hope you've enjoyed this journey with me, because I will be carrying on tomorrow with our next book, the book of Judges, and we will see what is in store there. So thank you for being here and enjoy your day. Take care. Bye.